intriguing is that he has a sweet tooth for Mysore Pak and ice cream, which is actually topping the charts. So I know that we are now going to understand the sweet relevance of value investing from him. Because, ladies and gentlemen, all of our attendees, we have with us someone who is absolutely looking forward to give us the answers in terms of how the markets that are extremely heated right now, the question being, is it possible to find value during such situations? So yes, we're going to bring on board our next speaker, Vetri Subramaniam, who is a group president and head of equity at UTI. And it's time to bring forth some interesting insights for all of you on the relevance of value investing. On that note, let's get our next session started with Mr. Subramaniam for all of you.
Good evening, everybody. Delighted to be here and to address this gathering at Cafe Mutual Ideas Fest. Also, it's wonderful to be up in the segment immediately after a discussion on heroes. The fact is that even though markets are at record highs, this has been a very unequal recovery. And I think, therefore, it certainly falls upon all of us who are a lot more privileged and have perhaps navigated these difficult times much better, to help those who have not been so fortunate. So I think it's wonderful that those heroes have been honored here today. What I'm going to be talking about is the relevance of value investing. I could spend hours and hours talking about value investing, but it's going to turn into a little bit of a sprint today, because I've got exactly 15 minutes to run you through and give you a sense of why value investing remains a very relevant method of investing. Now, when it comes to value investing, of course, the great guru Warren Buffett has defined it as intrinsic value, which is nothing but the cash that can be taken out of a business during the rest of its lifetime. But I think, unfortunately, the way most people have come to look at value is that it has come to just denote cheap valuations. Typically metrics like price to earnings, price to book, and of course there are so many other metrics that we use in terms of valuation. But value has unfortunately come to just mean cheap valuations, a low P, a low price to book. And I think this is unfortunate, because it's important to remember that when we think of value, it is nothing but the cash that can be taken out of the business during the rest of its remaining life. Of course, we do use measures like P and price to book, but what's important to remember is that these are only shorthand. They are shorthand because they are easy for us to communicate an idea, and the task of valuing cash flows that a company will generate over its lifetime is unfortunately very, very complex. But just because the P and the P by B are easy to communicate, we should not come to look at this shorthand as really the definition of value. So what I always say is that when you think about value, unfortunately, people have come to associate it with cheap statistical valuation. And this is a problem. Why is this a problem? Because unfortunately, people forget what they are actually looking at, which is the cash that the company generates over its lifetime, when they focus only on cheap statistical valuation. Let's look at some of the reasons why the valuations may be cheap. So for example, it could be to do with poor cash conversion. And I'll give you some examples about that. Very simplistically, when we say poor cash conversion, what we are really saying is Yes, companies report profits, but profits are based on certain accounting principles. They do not reflect the actual cash that the company actually earns at the end of the year. Profits do not necessarily convert into cash. And therefore, sometimes when you see those differences in PE multiple, they are not necessarily cheap when they actually reflect a difference in the inherent cash generation capability of that company. The other reason why sometimes this cheap statistical valuation can be misleading is because the low terminal value of the business, which means there is some disruption which is happening in the particular business in which that company operates, which means you cannot really be certain about the next 5 years and 10 years and 20 years of its operations. So then looking at a low price to earnings or low price to book based on comparing the value of the assets today or the earnings that company is generating today does not have much meaning, because you really don't know what might happen 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later because of the disruption. The third reason, capital allocation, we'll look at an example for this as well, and how a company uses the profits that it generates also feeds into the way that the company gets valued. There are two other factors which very often drive cheap statistical valuation. These are factors which I think are very well known to all of you. Typically, this is the way minority shareholders are treated, are the promoters, the founders, the management running the company in certain ways, which may be good for them, but not necessarily good for the interest of the minority shareholders. Maybe they are investing in new businesses which have nothing to do with the existing business. Maybe their compensation is excessive. Maybe some of the practices that they have in terms of related party transactions are questionable. So these are factors that you all know very well about, and these also lead to differences in valuations. And unfortunately, then sometimes it leads to what are optically cheap valuations. Promoter distractions because they are busy with something else, partly related again to the way that they treat minority shareholders. So these two are well known. I won't talk too much about these, but let's just look at some examples for the first three, because I think it's important to remember that when we talk about value investing, we are thinking about the life cycle earnings of the company and not just what it earns in the current year in the P&L. So let's look at a simple example here. This is of two pharma companies. This is all past data. I'm not making a recommendation on either of these companies to buy or sell. I'm just presenting you the past history of these companies. Now, you can see those lines over there on the chart, the sort of curves which go up and down. What these reflect is how much of the EBITDA that the company reports, which is profits before interest, tax, and depreciation, is actually converting into cash for the company. And what you can see is that consistently the darker line over a longer period of time is higher than the gray line. So we've also plotted the average for the 10-year period from March 10 to March 20. And you can see the darker average line on top, the dotted line. So Torrent Pharma typically converts 90% of its EBITDA into cash. Whereas if you look at a company like Aurobindo Pharma, it typically converts less than 60% of EBITDA into cash. Now, when companies are converting cash very differently, without doubt, valuations will look different between companies operating in very similar businesses and very similar profitability. So this is one factor that we need to keep in mind, that just looking for cheap valuations can be misleading because it does not reflect the actual cash that the company converts from its profits. Another example, this goes to the example of capital allocation. Now, a company not only makes profits, it then has to reinvest profits in its business to make the business sustainable and also for growth. This is what we call the free cash flow that the company generates. Free cash flow is the cash that it generates after reinvesting in its business. No company can afford to not reinvest in its business if it wants to grow and if it wants to remain profitable. Now, what we've plotted over here, the dark line is the PE of TCS, the gray line is the PE of HCL Tech, and that yellow bars you can see is the premium that one company is getting to the other, simply because TCS generates a lot more free cash flow, which means it is able to reinvest in its business and it still has so much more cash left over, which it can then either choose to do buybacks, it can distribute it by way of dividends, or it can keep it for strategic acquisitions. But TCS just throws up so much more free cash flow as compared to HCL Tech, and that is what gets reflected in that PE premium. So once again, capital allocation decisions can make a significant difference. Now, not to say that one company is necessarily poorer than the other. At a particular valuation, any company could be judged as being attractive. Disruption. This is another important issue of what diminishes terminal value. Think about it. Who buys compact discs anymore? Who buys DVDs anymore? Who buys photo film anymore? One of the places in my youth I spent a lot of time was a video lending library. It was a very profitable business. Doesn't exist anymore. So if you were to pay 20 times earnings, you would find that there were no earnings 10 years later simply because the business vanished. What will be the demand for engine lubricants in the future? What will be the demand for coal in the future, given the push on environmental factors and the need to reduce fossil fuels? These are all some examples. There is a counterpoint. Sometimes companies can change business models in front of our own eyes. The largest company in India has shifted from being a pure refining and chemical company into so many other business lines, including retail and telecom. So yes, companies can change their business model and reinvest cash flow into new business opportunities, but very few companies do that successfully. So disruption diminishes terminal value. And in the next slide, we can see an example of this. A very dominant company even today, which is Sun TV Network. But because of the rise of the OTT system, where you can put on an app and watch a program on your phone or on your iPad or on your TV, the traditional method of distribution of cable TV and also of DTH is getting disrupted. New and younger consumers are choosing different ways to consume content, and as a result, you see that gradually getting reflected in the P. Not because current earnings are getting depressed, because we are now worried about what will happen 5 years or 10 years later. Will the company have to change strategy? How much will it have to reinvest? That has an impact on cash flow and also on free cash flow. Finally, I believe value investing is always relevant, but we need to be wary of what we call value traps. I'm not going to explain each and every one of the traps that you see here. We've already talked about some of the traps right at the top that you see about cash conversion, capital allocation. We've talked about technological change, obsolescence, the ability to manage cost. That can also be a significant trap. Once upon a time, the leading telecom company in Mumbai and Delhi, MTNL, was a nifty company. It was a Sensex company. But when technology transitioned to mobile, they completely lost out. And today, revenue is less than the cost of paying its employees. So the flexibility to manage cost can also lead to a value trap. So from a value investing perspective, these are the traps that we need to be careful about. Finally, as a takeaway, why am I saying value investing is relevant? Value does not mean cheap valuation multiples. Yes, we want to buy things which are cheap relative to expectations. That is what we call margin of safety. But we must consider what is the attractiveness of the business in the future. Will the company be able to deploy capital at an attractive rate of return? Will it still be there 20 years from now? Can it survive a difficult period? Think about the video lending library. It doesn't exist anymore. Of course, we have an example. The world's best known OTT company, Netflix, was originally a lending library company, but it pivoted very successfully to this online distribution of content and has been a major success and created so much market cap for investors. But very important, the biggest trap in value investing is absolute cheapness. What we want is cheap relative to expectations. We have to be wary about the pitfalls in value investing, which I've already gone through, and some of them are listed here again. Finally, as a value investor, I think the words of Howard Marks at the bottom are most important. The choice is not between value and growth. It is between value today and the value tomorrow. And what sits in between value today and value tomorrow is growth, sustainability, limited risk of disruption, and the ability to invest capital at a very high rate of return. So that was my presentation today on the topic of value investing, how we approach value investing, why we think it is relevant in a time of significant disruption to think about the long term and to not get carried away with cheap multiple valuations being the definition of value. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure sharing my thoughts with you here today in this forum.
Services play a leading role in the economy. In